Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of 1320 Stuff. So glad that you joined us. I'm Pastor Daryl.
I'm Lindsey.
I'm RJ. And we have a special guest with us today. We're gonna allow her to introduce herself. So special guest, who are you?
Hey y'all, I'm CeCe. I am a senior at Sex State in the film program, so I'm an aspiring director. I also do acting as well, so you know, up and coming on the rise.
Awesome. So we are glad to have you here now.
Thanks for
CeCe
having
is here.
me.
We got a great episode for you all today. And I'm gonna just be honest, I don't have much to say on this one. So that's why CeCe is here and Lindsey is here and the man of God is here back there. So I'm just here
There's a T at the end.
because that lets you know.
That's the holiness.
Yes.
Hey, holiness or hell. Come on, somebody. Put those dirty hands together.
Yes, okay.
Well, COVID, you better have clean hands these days.
Those
Please.
dirty hands together.
Clean hands and no COVID.
Listen, really quick, on our last episode, it was our entertainment episode. We had Mel here who killed the stage. We can't wait to have her back. We talked about a lot of stuff, the culture of music, whether it influences people or people influences music, and it just a plethora of, I like saying that word, I think I said that before, a plethora of other topics in our last episode. And so this episode, we're gonna get into probably some of Lindsey's favorite topics. And I'm pretty sure her voice might elevate a little bit, but it's okay. Don't get scared. Don't get worried.
I don't know why I wore a long sleeve shirt.
Yeah, because I'm already
She's
hot up in
passionate.
here. So listen, I know Pastor D asked a question on one of our previous episodes about which one of these do you think we should cancel? Should it be racism, sexism, or classism? And for those who don't know what those three things are, which I'm sure you all do, you're pretty smart, we're going to probably hit on each one. And then we're going to just kind of give our own opinions of what we think, which one. If we had to choose just one, which one will we focus on to cancel? And so we just going to get the conversation started. And I know Lindsey got a lot to say. So we just go, hey, take it over. I'm going to just sit back.
I mean, obviously, I think that all three of them is a form of discrimination depending on a different. Racism would be race, ethnic background, and sexism based off of your sex. And then classism, which I think is a really big one that people don't pay a lot of attention to, but has influenced the government, influenced our world very much, and people just kind of skate over it. It's more about your class, how much money you have. And I think socioeconomic status is a really big part of whether or not you can be successful in this world. I think it's super hard to say if you could only cancel one, like if you could fix one, which one would you pick? That's really, really, really hard for me. Because I feel like as a Black woman, we're taught that we're Black first, right? And that's just my personal opinion about being a woman and being Black. I think that it's always to protect our race and protect the Black man. And I think that is the first thing that comes to mind is I would like to fix racism because I think about men and I think about the stuff that the Black man goes through. But then I think about the fact that sexism for a Black woman, I wonder if we fix racism, if Black men would do the same or would work against sexism. So it's hard for me to do racism when I think about how difficult it is to be a woman. So any thoughts from anyone?
I mean, for me, it is very difficult to choose one. But for me, I would cancel classism. And the reason for that is classism encompasses both of those groups. It encompasses those of every skin color. It encompasses both sexes. It encompasses all of people. And if you think about it, classism has been one of the driving forces behind a lot of the evils in which people have used to get money and all things. They basically, you look at the starting of America, and I had this conversation not too long ago and preached a message about it. And there was some disagreement, and some folk had some issues with some of the things that were stated. But I pointed out to several people that this is the history of America. It was built upon classism initially. Mm-hmm. It was the worst as defined by the best sent from England over here to say, hey, y'all take all these ones we don't want and start your little thing on that wasted piece of land over there.
Yeah.
And so it's no wonder you had the Native Americans or the Native folk who were here before treated the way they were treated because you sent over people who had already been discriminated against, oppressed on, stepped on, and you're still using them. They're not going to enter into a space with kindness. They're not going to enter into a space. And on top of that, they're still being used, you know? And so classism for me, it covers a broader spectrum. When you look at Dr. King was, nobody messed with him until he started talking about the Poor People's Campaign and included white people in that campaign. When Dr. King started talking about all poor people, they was like, we need to go ahead and take him out. Before that, it was just, he cheated on his wife. It was like little silly stuff they said about him. So it's not to diminish the other two. I just think classism covers such a bigger swath of the population that if I had to pick one, I'd probably pick that one.
But if I could challenge that, I feel like classism is the only one that we actually have the power to overcome on an individual level, right? If there are people that come from poor neighborhoods and, lower income, and you can get access to the right resources, you can get an education, and you can find yourself in a different socioeconomic class. That's the one thing that if you work hard enough, potentially, you put your mind to it, that's the one thing that you can fix and you can change. Sexism, I'll always be a woman. Racism, I'll always be black. There is no amount of money that can put me in a different space.
Can you change class?
But that's a big if. What you said, with classism and individual choices, because if I'm not given an opportunity, if I'm not given the resources, if I'm applying for schools and not being accepted because I'm black or because I'm in a certain class, then I'm always going to be stuck in this space. I'm always going to be stuck at the bottom. Prime example, I kind of shared the story. I grew up in the projects, Robert Taylor homes in Chicago all my life till I went off to college. And so it was like, it was a personal choice of mine. But guess what? If I had not gotten accepted into this school because they had a lower GPA entrance, because I graduated high school with a 1.9 because nobody told me the significance of a GPA. So I didn't put forth much effort in high school. I was just getting by with C's and D's. So I graduated. I luckily got accepted into college. And that's when things started to change for me. And so I had to gradually crawl my way out. But everybody don't have that mindset to do that.
Right.
And aren't given the opportunities to do that. And so I honestly think you can start with, and I'm empathetic to sexism, I guess, because I'm not a woman. So it's like, I can't really, that one will probably be third for me. No offense to you guys, because when we fix
that's
classism
exactly
and racism,
that
first
leads to what she was saying.
Because I feel like you made my point. Yeah. Like, yes, it's harder for sure, but it's the only thing that you can get out of. You're no longer looked at as the person from Robert Taylor Homes. Obama was poor, and then you became Obama. Oprah was poor, and now you're Oprah. But he's still a black man, and she's still a black woman. But they're no longer poor.
But those are individual examples.
Are we talking about
Classism
individuals?
is a systemic
I know.
thing. And that's my point, though. We're talking about systemically. So you got individuals that got out, but they only allow so many out per year. And once that quota's filled, it's a wrap. Everybody else is stuck in that.
Let me get CeCe thoughts on this because I feel like she got something to say.
I'm sitting here taking it all in. I'm gonna play devil's advocate for a little bit. So I'm focusing on classism because I feel like even with today's, with the protests and things that we've been doing, that's kind of been slacking off a little bit. But it was much different than our first, like the civil rights movement. It was a lot more momentum. There was a lot more of other races involved. Honestly, I mean, with all the what do they call it? The studies that are coming out, by 2050, white people aren't going to be the majority anymore. So when that happens, the whole power shift is going to change. So is racism going to be such a big deal 100 years from now? Whereas classism, there's nothing really put in place that would help us kind of narrow the gap quicker. Like we have to force that. Whereas racism,
the gap is growing.
And it's getting bigger, whereas we're blending, we're mixing, you know what I mean? The power shift is gonna eventually change even without our, direct influence. So, I don't know.
Lindsey's struggling.
Yeah,
Lindsey's struggling.
because to me, if we don't fix the other two, getting rid of classism just means that all of those poor white people get to be
It also means all of us poor black and brown
because we
people.
still racist and we're still sexist. So women and black people
But
are still...
racism, but think about this though, Lindsey. Racism is based on power.
Yes.
If I now have equal power with you, I nullify your ability to be racist.
Just equal the playing field a little
Well, I don't think it
saying-
nullifies their ability to be racist. Because I think racism...
It does, because if we are the same number of judges, the same number of Republicans and Democrats, if we are president every other cycle,
then it's sexism. Then we have to go with sexism because if we take away classism, okay, then it'll knock out racism. But men will still dominate all fields, and women will still be in a position of being lesser, in a position of being in danger in situations. So, yeah, okay, then I'll take the bait there. But then that means that sexism is more important.
But I think if we have equal opportunity as the rich white men who have the power right now, I don't think it would still be, you know what I mean? If we all have level playing fields, then...
Because if you fix classism, then you have the equal number of blacks, whites, males, females, all...
Don't try to be fixing all the problems under classism.
I just said
I think classism is about rich versus poor.
I said classism covers a bigger...
It's about rich versus poor. Sexism and the issues of sexism will still exist even if we all make the same amount of money. Why? Because just physically, men end up being more dominant.
But this is the thing. If you fix sexism, you only help women.
What about me, Lindsey?
Classism.
You don't care about me.
But Lindsey feel like we don't care about her.
And
And you don't,
we
because he
love
put
you.
sexism at the bottom.
He did.
Because here's the problem. Because you don't even get it.
I don't.
You can't even conceptualize
Right.
what it means and what it is to be a woman. And I think that this is an argument that black women and black men have a lot, because black men have the fear of walking down the street or driving down the street and getting pulled over and being killed. And that's a real fear. And I share in that fear because I have brothers and I have, a dad, and I care about that. Women have fear, black women have fears as well. Like, we get killed too, and we get raped, and we get followed, and if we tell a man no, we don't want to give his number, he smack us in the head with a skateboard. I don't know if y'all saw that video.
That wasn't funny, but the way you
she
said it.
turned him down, and he literally took a skateboard and slapped her across the face.
Did nothing
knocked
happen
her
to him
out
for
cold.
this?
Nothing.
I don't know.
Not
it
that was
it went
publicized.
viral.
Yeah.
So
was no
let me
movement.
say this, because again, sexism is something that's not really talked about. If it isn't the women bringing it up, then it's never really talked about. And so while I can only empathize because I don't know what it's like, I haven't been a part of these conversations in the black community or amongst just a circle of friends talking about sexism. It's always about primarily racism, not even classism. It's always about racism and blacks versus whites. And so I think this is a great conversation to be enlightened on so that we can try to figure out a way to move forward. But for me, based on the question, because I don't know anything about now say not anything about it. It's just not talked about. Sexism and then classism even a little bit less. We're basically looking at racism. And for me, I think racism is something that's learned or taught. And so I don't think you can even cancel that, because as long as there's white people that have these racist thoughts, they're going to keep continuing to pour and feed into their children who's going to grow up to be racist.
But even that's more bigotry and discrimination. Racism is a system based on power.
Yeah.
So if you remove classism, you undo the ability, the legs of racism. You can still have bigoted people. They can still hate me, but we both judges. So I guess, and my only thing with, not against y'all. I'm just saying, I don't think it's the least one. I just think if you remove sexism, it does nothing for the other two. It only impacts one group of people.
I feel like racism and sexism are almost tied together. So if we fix
together?
Almost, yeah. They're kind of like one came after the other. So for instance, if we're talking about...
Are you a woman first or a black person first?
Depends on the day, to be real. Depends on the situation.
And that's
depends
the
on
hard
the day.
part, I
it's
think,
harder for
women.
us to, we can't pick. You know what I mean? You guys can pick one. We're stuck in the middle.
As women, we can be black first and fight for men and care about black men. And then you'll have black men that say, like 50 Cent, that says like, yeah, I want somebody exotic. It's like as a woman.
But that's not sexism.
Whew.
No, but as a woman, it's still an issue that I deal with, and then to elevate the race, to elevate race over my sex, sometimes we end that. I think that sexism is so important to me, and that's why classism is hard. It's like I'm gonna get hit regardless.
Period.
And if we fix classism, that's good for men. But if sexism still exists, I'm gonna still get hurt. And so that's why I feel like it's so hard as a woman to pick, because I'm gonna be black or I'm gonna be a woman regardless.
So do you think we still get hurt because of where we are as far as society? Like because we have the least amount of power?
Yeah.
So if we had more opportunity for more power, you know what I mean?
Do y'all have the least amount of power?
Oh, we're definitely on the bottom of the totem pole.
Black women?
Absolutely. Yes.
Well, okay, sexism. Let's talk about women though. Do you all have the least amount of power? Because at the word of a woman, a man's career life can be undone in a second. Whether it's true,
depends on the man, because Trump is president, and
depends on the man.
He gets to do and say what he pleases.
That's not depend on the man.
Yes, it does.
Our president is different because there was a power structure in place behind
So it
him.
still depends on the man.
Exactly.
I think I guess my point is that if there is enough women to say X, Y, and Z, it's going to negatively impact the majority of men.
We need enough women. That's the problem. Even that is the problem. We need enough. We need enough people to come out and say something.
That's a human thing, though, because you need enough people to say something. Because
one
people
man
lie.
can meet one woman on the street and ruin and change her entire life.
And one woman can meet one man and ruin his entire life.
Her allegations, like if we're talking about sexual assault is the most difficult crime to prove. It is the crime. It is least prosecuted, least charges are brought. So
when
that
you
is
talk
a very
about sexual
difficult
assault, the numbers are worse when it's men that have been assaulted. Less men report it when they've been assaulted. Less men bring charges when they've been assaulted. So if you're talking about the assault part, I'm talking about when men have been sexually assaulted by women or even other men. Men bring less charges. Men report that less than even the women do. So that's hard to say sexual assault proves anything because it can happen to men.
The circumstances, and I don't want to, and I want to be very careful about this because I think that sexual assault against men is serious and an important issue. The difference to me is the physical power difference. And for a woman to assault a man, either he has to be a child or he has to be in some way under the influence of something, or something has to happen in order for her to take advantage of him physically off strength alone. That is different for women. So yes, there is assault that happens against men. I also think that it is different. The circumstances have to be very different in order for a man to be physically overpowered and assaulted by a
So
woman.
let me ask y'all this. Would you cancel sexism knowing that you leave the other two on the table? And I'm asking this now, I ask you this knowing full well you are consistently asked as women to sacrifice for the greater
That's the
good
problem.
of others.
Because to me, I feel like picking the other two advances you all. And that's great, because I love black men and I want the advancement of black men. But the trouble that I have is that
you don't trust us to advance.
no,
That's
absolutely not.
That's real.
RJ, that hurts.
Yeah, I almost
real.
cried,
Well,
but I held it in.
Even his answer kind of like backed up what she was saying, though.
because
It was like,
I
sexism
was-
gonna be last.
because I was
We'll get to y'all.
uninformed. I'm being taught here,
Right.
and
Women don't understand. I mean, men understand the vulnerability of a woman due to her proximity to him. You have to have a daughter or have a sister or like have it happen to them in order for it to hit you. And that to me is the problem. And that's why I struggle with advancing anything that would advance a man and still keep women in the background, because we would have to trust that you guys would pull us with you.
But that's human nature. All people can't see beyond their fence. It's my family, it's my wife, my
But I
husband,
think
my kid.
there's been opportunities where y'all could have brought us up with you, though.
When?
Civil rights movement versus the women's movement. We had to pick between which one we were going to support. But then after the civil rights movement, there was no push for black women's rights. And okay, let's go back to, you know what I mean, the women's movement and see what they were talking about. It was just like, oh, okay, we got what we wanted. Let's go to work.
well, did we even
And
really
then-
get it though? We've been fighting,
and
ever
that's the
since.
other issue. It's always like the black issue is always going to
First.
take precedence over women. And I get it, because I'm black and I care, but it's also scary to say, like, do I want to put any man in any more of a position of power? I don't know, because women are not safe and in a world full of powerful men, period.
But I can say that when the whole Me Too movement started, that brought light to a lot of issues and situations as it pertains to women. And it appeared that women started to get some power, some momentum, and there was this thing going. But that has since, to me, kind of dwindled.
Well, on the
Did
flip
the
side
men
of that,
hop on it?
Right.
Did the men hop on that
They-
pony?
no.
And you know
But I'm
why?
gonna tell you too, no, but there were some men that tried to hop on the train and women crucified
Yes.
them for hopping on the train. So it almost puts you in a deacon cuss word, damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of place.
well, I mean,
and
okay.
you wear what?
With recent protests, right? George Floyd, the whole world stopped. Breonna Taylor, we're still waiting. We still have to be the ones like, you know, her killers are still out there, right? We shouldn't have to. I can't tell you how many black men I've seen even talk about Breonna Taylor publicly.
Well, I've seen a lot, and I do think that they care. And I think that there is a difference between Breonna and George with just the way that they died. So I think that there are some differences there, but I do believe that like if we take the Me Too movement, the problem is our world is so rooted in rape culture, and just it's been so normal to be inappropriate as men, is that it's a fear to come out because you probably undid something or said something that now is no longer appropriate. It's the same thing with racism, where they go back and find old tweets and it's like, oh, at one time, and it's like, yeah, well, that was normal then and now it's not. And so a lot of men, there's a fear because you might have done it. You might have said it. I'm sure you said or done something that made someone feel uncomfortable. So there's a fear. And I think that's also the fear of tearing it down, is that we have lived in a world where rape culture is normal, harassment, making inappropriate comments, catcalling, like it's been so normalized.
So hold on, again, RJ and I are not women.
Yeah.
And this is not being funny anyway. It's a serious question. I've had this conversation with one of my sisters. We had a whole long conversation about this because she has sons. She's a black woman with black boys. And she made the comment which struck me. She said, I'm concerned for my black sons because in this current climate where there is this Me Too and race, all this stuff. She said, I don't know that they will ever be comfortable approaching a woman. And she said, I don't even know how to have that conversation with them. And so this is my question. What examples can you give, whatever man may watch this and may see this, what does that look like when you say inappropriate or too aggressive? Or because in most cases, and it's not to defend, it's just, we just know, hey, yo, what's up? Shout, you get that, shout, hey, what's up?
No, I don't think
I'm not saying that's I'm just saying,
I feel
how
you.
will we know?
There's plenty of signs.
I'm not saying like if you were trying to talk to a woman, a random woman, I mean, obviously you shouldn't be disrespectful. I'm talking about
But
men.
what's disrespectful? For you feel like you shouldn't have to define that. But if this is a rape culture and a man's world, as the singer said, how would most men know what is disrespectful?
To me, it's not about like the average person approaching a woman to talk to her. The issue is men in a position of power using that position to get things out of women. That's the problem. And that's why a lot of the men didn't come out, because you're a director, you have the money, you have the power, and you have put people in positions to get what you want so that you can give them what it is that they want. That's more of the issue. And so if you're the boss, if we're at work, it's not the time for you to say, oh, you looking good today. No, I'm not here for that. I'm here to work. Now, if you see me at a bar and you say, I look beautiful, oh girl, you look good. Like, okay, maybe I don't like that. I think that's annoying, then I won't talk to you. But I ain't finna Me Too it.
Right.
The Me Too is people using power, men using power to get what they want out of women. That's the bigger issue. And it's like you said about racism and classism. It is a social caste that gives you positions of power and you use that power against other people. And I think that women experience that often.
Yep.
And
So if a man was to ask you, or me, I'm asking you as a man, what is it that we can do to assist you guys in this movement to remove sexism, or to make you feel like you have the support of your black brothers, so that you're not feeling alone out here, or that it's all the weight is falling on you? Because as the man said, there were some men who tried to step in as it relates to the Me Too movement and got shunned for it. But what can we do to assist you guys moving forward so that you're not left out here alone?
I think that you can do the same thing you want your white counterparts to do for you in this fight against racism. People want to act like they don't know what's needed, or be an ally. If something, first of all, don't be one of the people that does the things that we're talking about. Being inappropriate, using your position of power. If women say something or say that they were made to feel away or something happened, don't gaslight them. And I'm very careful, and I agree with what you said, your friend said, because I have brothers. And so I am not one of those women that's like, and this is, let me be very careful with saying this, when the Me Too movement came out and there was this hashtag and this idea of like, believe women, I'm very, very cognizant of the truth that people lie. In the work that I do, I have seen reports come through for whatever benefit, and they're false. And so I know that happens. And I have brothers. And so I'm not going to be like, yeah, every time somebody says something happened, it happened. Because if somebody says my brother did something, I'm going to need some more facts, I'm going to need some more information, because it's my, I'm not just about to say, yeah, he did it because you said it, But I also think that teaching, if your friend or your brother or your dog says something or does something inappropriate, it's stepping up. And I think that's what a lot of people have been saying today. It's like, if you see a woman being harassed as a man, like, speak up. And for her, because what is my voice? So, okay, then we get a mob of women to try and fight a man off. But I think that the same thing that you want white counterparts to do and other people to do in the workplace for you, I think that's what women are asking of men. To step up and be an ally.
Accountability, basically. It's like, how we were saying white silence is compliance. Same thing. Your silence when you know that your friend or homeboy is disrespecting her, that's the same thing, because you're watching it happen. You're letting it happen. You know that he has that type of mentality, instead of talking to him like, hey, bro, let's sit down and talk about this. You know what I mean? You don't necessarily have to put it on display and like embarrass him. I think with another thing with the Me Too movement, they were talking to other women. They weren't talking to their homeboy or their friend. They're over here like, yeah, I understand. And it's like, we don't want to hear that. We want you to go do the work with your people and your friends. And you know what I mean? Spread that accountability a lot more.
When y'all laughing and
right,
about
oh, that's just how he is.
No, why would R. Kelly be
okay.
able to bring a bunch of little girls around, nobody say nothing? It's just like this idea of the things.
But that goes back to something we said, you and I talked about before, I don't remember when, but the same thing with like a Kanye and his stuff. They employ people and people are trying to get their check. But if you look, so let me ask y'all this, and you know, Malcolm X said some time ago that the most disrespected, not listened to, underprivileged is a black
unprotected.
woman. Is unprotected. Is that still accurate today?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say so. Because I think that, you know, as we progress and like Black people are in a different space than they were when Malcolm X was speaking that, I think that everyone's progressed. Women, Black women are still at the bottom of that totem pole. Even when we're talking about money, even when we're talking about money in the workplace, fighting for equal pay, Black women are not fighting for the same pay that the white women are at because they're getting more.
Yeah.
We're getting the very least. And that isn't to say that Black women aren't doing great. Like, you know, we're entrepreneurs and we're in positions of power, but in a generalized sense, Black women are the least. And I think that, you know, and hopefully we're on the rise and we're in, you know, it feels different, but who knows? It feels like we're in a better space and getting to a better space. But I definitely feel like I feel like we're still in that, we would still be at the bottom. I don't know who would be below a Black woman.
Question for all three of you. I'm gonna separate it. RJ, I'm giving you racism. Lindsey, sexism. CeCe, you got classism. Is the church complicit in your area? And let's say we all Black. Let's deal with the Black church. Is the Black church complicit in racism, sexism, or classism? Whichever one y'all want to go first.
I can go first.
I know you ready. Guns loaded. That's what I'm scared
For sure.
Lindsey like, I
feel
for
like
this one.
The Black church wrote the book on sexism for sure. And I think that, and you can't forget that the Black church was birthed out of slavery and racism. And so the first position of power, respect, and honor that a Black man could have was to be a pastor, was to be a preacher. And when they felt that little bit of power and standing in front of a group of people and they were listening to them and they were following what they said, that was a huge difference from being somebody on a plantation. And so that was a level of power that they had never felt or experienced before. And it was perverted and exploited, and naturally, women would fall at the bottom of that. And we all know that in churches, and maybe not as much anymore, and I'm sure it still is, but you know, the pastor would be sleeping with multiple people, or he would have multiple kids. And I've heard stories of this, of pastors would have multiple kids by multiple women in the church, and it was never spoken about. It wasn't a problem. Women had to be in the choir, or they had to do the announcements, and they weren't able to be pastors or preachers, or have positions of power in the church. And so I 100% believe that the church has perpetuated it. We have moved to a place where it's better, and we obviously see women pastors. But for sure, the church, I think, 100% wrote the book on sexism.
I knew your guns was loaded.
Yeah, so as it relates to racism, I would have to agree. You know, even with this Black Lives Matter movement and the recent death of George Floyd, and how the churches have come together and marching for equal rights. But I think the church likes the idea of this whole separate but equal. We want to stay separate, but we want equality, you know, and all you really do is hear preachers preaching about, well, Jesus was black. And back in the day, we were the first black. It's always about race and color because it's like we're trying to prove a point to our flock, our parishioners. And so I don't really hear preachers preaching on inclusiveness of all people. We talk about we're one race and God loves all and we all bleed red, blood and all of this. But in the back of their minds, they're pouring into their flocks that we need to stay just within our own. Let's continue. Let's build up our communities. Let's build up our businesses. Let's get this for us. It's never about, and again, I don't know if they should be preaching, let's bring the whites into our church. Let's make this a multicultural, multiracial type of congregation. Because I think we've gotten so content with how the black church is. We understand the church lingo and all of this stuff. And so it's like, I don't think the black church wants to be inclusive of everyone, whether that's right or wrong. We just don't. We're used to what we have, and that's just how we want to have it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think to that point, I feel like some black churches, it's not comfortable to be multicultural because the truth is painful. And a lot of times white people don't want to hear that. They didn't come to church to hear about black and white. And that needs to be discussed. In a time like this, that's important. And we need to discuss it and we need to talk about what the church's role in it is. And I think that a lot of white people would prefer to go to church, get a feel-good sermon and pay that little money, get up out of there.
And then too, I think it makes a lot of white folks uncomfortable because when we talk about it in church, we come off very aggressive. Like we're super angry, mad and angry and don't know how to where to put that frustration. And it makes them very uncomfortable to the point where it makes some of us uncomfortable listening to the other angry black folks talk about it.
What about classism?
Oh, well, I was going to say even the image of Jesus in the black church a lot of the times is a white man. So that whole dichotomy between how is his hair wool and he was from here, but he looks like, you know what I mean? That's a whole nother thing. But classism, I'm trying to play devil's advocate.
No, just say it.
In my opinion, I feel like it's still very prevalent in the church just based on my own experience. I went to an all-black church all of my life. Tithes and offering on a regular Sunday and Wednesday, Thursday, whenever Bible study was. But I didn't really see that same effort getting put back into my community as far as all of this money that we're raising every week or twice a week or whatever it is. There are people in the pews that are not eating because they're giving tithes and offering. You know what I mean? And then they go home and it's like, okay, we're going to figure out some food somehow, but we just gave everything that we have, or now we can't pay the light bill, or you know what I mean? There's so much, I want to say, just attention on money in general. If money's the root of all evil, why are we even dealing with it in the church on a regular basis?
Well, I think it's the love of money and not money. And I also think that church is a community-based organization. So if you're in a poor community, your parishioners will be poor. And so it's always going to be a different classes when it comes to churches, because if you go to a different, neighborhood and out in the suburbs where people make more money, then it's a different class of people going to that church. I don't know if the church perpetuates or plays a role in classism, in my opinion.
So let me ask you guys this as we get ready to wind down. And you're not going to be able to answer this at this point. Maybe we'll do like a live or something, or we'll put it in the comments. Or also, that you guys on our website, there's a space where we can do blogs, and so we put some blogs on there. So maybe y'all can answer in a blog. But what do you do, Lindsey, with the creation story? Is the creation story sexist? Now you can't answer that now, but it's just something to. RJ, what do you do with this Tower of Babel? And when you talk about unity and unification, and God is the one who separates and divides the people and the languages. And I think you have to consider, what our church, and you're talking about classism, is multi-ethnic, but it's majority black. We intentionally moved to an impoverished area of the city. So it's more difficult to minister to the needs of this community because it is majority of this community supplying the church in a way. But I think what you have to get to is a place where people that have another class status are willing to come into places that don't match where they're from and gather with people, like RJ said, that don't look like themselves, irregardless of whether man or woman is preaching and pastoring, to fully serve humanity. It's just not possible. Y'all, RJ, you about to say something?
No, I was going to try to wrap it up.
That
Yeah.
was on the road, man. You know, you go
No.
for it. No, go for it.
No, I was just going to say, I think this has been a very enlightening conversation, and I surely learned quite a bit about the isms, definitely, especially sexism. And so I'm looking to learn more about it. Listen, we have a poll on our IG and our Facebook page about which one we should cancel. So please make sure you log on to our social media sites and take that poll. But again, I don't think we can cancel one, as you can see from this conversation. It's not about just canceling one. I think we really definitely have to tackle all three. And I'm pretty sure we'll have more conversations about these different topics as the season goes on. So with that being said,
cancel one of them.
he said cancel one of them. But listen,
Thanks for tuning in, y'all.
we'll catch y'all next time.
Love y'all. Peace. You all, I think we have to consider that no matter what the ism is, that we often need to personalize it. But not just personalize it, because truthfully, that's what most of us would do when we consider which one do we cancel. But oftentimes, trying to decide what to cancel when it comes to racism, sexism, classism, has more to do with us considering the other than ourselves. That is what the isms are based on, is the isms are based on us not considering the other. So I would implore you on this day, that you would this day consider what our sisters go through. For those of us that are men, let's consider them. Those of us that are well off and don't live below the poverty line, let's consider them. Even those that are in poverty, I know many times we assume that those that are wealthy don't have problems, but as we see consistently in our news cycles, that even those with money, those with houses and homes and vacations and cars, they struggle with depression, they struggle with suicidal thoughts. Let's consider them. And when we consider racism, with all that's going on in our world, it's quite simple. Consider those that do not share the same skin color as ourselves. The only way to cancel one or any of them is that we would consider other people as humans too. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please like, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, all those social media outlets. Check out the webpage for the blog. Check out all the things that we are going to upload in the next few weeks as we continue discussing and probing the hard questions. If you remember nothing else for today, consider the other person. All right, y'all, I'm out. Nipsey, unity, peace.